Hi everyone. Tonight we're going to step back into a world with no clocks, no phones, no electricity, just wind through the trees, a belly full of turnip stew, and the kind of sleep that modern people would kill for. Picture this: you've just trudged home from 14 hours of back-breaking labor in the fields. Dirt crusts under your nails, your feet are soaked through with mud, and your back hums with the kind of dull ache that modern gym rats pay money to simulate. Your eyelids are heavy before you even step through the wooden door of your cottage. Your body isn't just tired, it's completely, unapologetically demolished. And here's the wildest part: you're about to sleep better than 99% of people alive today. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Seriously, I love seeing all your locations light up the comments. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started on tonight's journey together. You reach your tiny thatched hut just as the sun kisses the horizon. The sky glows orange behind the crooked tree line. Your hands tremble from the repetitive swing of the sickle. Your legs threaten to crumple beneath you. Your reward, a wooden bowl of lukewarm barley stew, maybe a crust of bread and a gulp of weak ale. That's dinner. There's no dessert, no scrolling TikTok in bed, no unwinding to Netflix. You barely even talk. Just grunt to your partner, pat the kid on the head, and drop down onto the straw mattress in the corner. It's not exactly memory foam, but after a day like this, the floor would have felt like heaven. This kind of exhaustion is almost extinct in the modern world. Today we talk about burnout and mental fatigue, but medieval fatigue. That was physical to the core. You felt it in your calves, your shoulders, your spine. It wasn't the stress of emails or deadlines. It was the stress of trying not to lose a finger to a scythe. Or starving. And because of that deep physical exhaustion, you didn't toss and turn. You didn't doom scroll. You didn't even lie awake thinking about whether someone misinterpreted your tone in that conversation with your neighbor 3 days ago. You collapsed. Your body screamed for sleep, and it got it. Modern studies on sleep latency, basically how fast you fall asleep, show that deeply exhausted people drift off faster. Peasants probably hit the straw within minutes of lying down. No chamomile tea, no white noise app, no pillow mist with notes of sandalwood and bergamot, just pure, undiluted fatigue. Here's the twist: you actually slept better than most royals. While kings and queens lay awake worried about coups and treason and tried to get comfortable on stiff linens, you muddy aching and snoring were halfway to dreamland before the fire even died down. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants actually wanted this lifestyle or just accepted it. But what's becoming clearer with every new study on pre-industrial sleep is that people like you had something. We've lost a natural, deeply physical connection to rest. There were no midnight emails, no glowing blue screens, no artificial light extending your day. Just sunrise, sunset, and the rhythm of survival. And let's not forget the jokes your fellow peasants made about rich folks needing soft pillows. You once heard old Tom down the lane say, "If your mattress don't bite you, it's not real living." He was talking about bed bugs, but still, the humor was there. Here's an odd fact to fall asleep on: some laborers were so tired they'd sleep while herding sheep. Leaning on their crooks, half-dozing eyes open, but mind elsewhere. Imagine being so sleep-deprived your body starts micro-napping while standing. That's not just tired, that's medieval tired. And if you were lucky in the poorest sense of the word, You'd even snore. Loud, rude, glorious snoring that made your whole family kick you in the shins. But it meant you were out cold, no insomnia, no melatonin gummies, just sleep like a sack of turnips. So tonight, as you lie in your bed, probably alone, probably on a memory foam mattress, remember this: somewhere in the 1300s, a peasant just like you, covered in mud and smelling like sheep, is sleeping harder than you've ever slept in your life. And he doesn't even know what a deadline is. The moment the sun dips below the trees, your world starts to vanish. Not in a poetic way, in a very real, very dark way. Light you see is not a guaranteed thing. You can't flick it on. Candles cost money. Oil lamps. That's rich folk stuff. Once daylight disappears, so does most of your ability to function. And for a medieval peasant like you, that means only one thing: bedtime. No matter what you're doing, mending a boot, gnawing on the last of your bread, or trying to pick hay out of your socks, once that light fades, so do you. Your body starts to slow, like someone gently pressing the brakes on your whole system. The village grows quieter. The chickens have already roosted. The cow has settled. And even the dogs have stopped pretending to care. There's something oddly comforting about this forced bedtime. You don't get to choose when to sleep, it chooses you. There's no FOMO, no urge to stay up binging one more episode, because there's nothing to do and no way to see it, even if there were. You, your family, and maybe a few fleas all settle down for the night as one united sleepy force. This rhythm dictated by the sun wasn't just a convenience. It aligned your internal clock, your circadian rhythm, with nature itself. Studies today show that blue light from screens wrecks our melatonin levels, but you've got moonlight and fire glow. That's it. Melatonin's thriving in your system like a pampered noble. Oddly enough, people from this era often describe the dark as being heavier. It wasn't just absence of light, it was a presence. Like the night sat on your shoulders, wrapped you in stillness. Historians still debate whether this psychological weight of darkness contributed to better sleep, or if it just scared people into lying still. Either way, it worked. You'd maybe mumble a final word to whoever's closest to you. Good night. Or move your elbow, and then it's lights out. Literally. Because your one candle has burned low, and you're not wasting another one. That's when your body starts to really let go. The absence of light cues your pineal gland to start pumping out sleep hormones. Your breathing slows, and unlike your 21st century counterpart, you're not up playing Tetris with the ceiling fan shadows, wondering if you said something weird in a conversation 3 years ago. You're already in stage 1 sleep. Here's something else: because your bedtime aligns so perfectly with sundown, you actually start sleeping a bit before the deepest point of the night. That means your REM cycles get to run their course at their natural pace without being shoved forward by alarm clocks or compressed by doom scrolling. Odd fact, medieval monks used to complain about falling asleep during prayers right after sunset, especially in winter when the nights stretched on and on. But you don't have to worry about prayers unless you're feeling guilty about stealing that extra apple last week. You're already halfway through your first sleep, and this natural rhythm, it doesn't just help you fall asleep faster. It makes your sleep richer, deeper, longer. Your brain clears out toxins. Your muscles rebuild. You're not being constantly poked awake by beeping devices or distant traffic. The only interruption might be a rooster crowing too early or someone in the next bed kicking you in their dream. One more thing: dreams. Because you go to bed earlier and sleep in longer, your dream cycles stretch out too. That means more vivid, sometimes weirdly vivid dreams. You might dream of talking cows or falling into grain silos or having a long, heartfelt conversation with Saint Bridget about turnips. Nobody's judging, especially not in the dark. Even the soundscape of your village helps you sleep. Think about it. No sirens, no TV hum, no fridge buzzing every half hour. Just crickets whined through the thatch, and the occasional murmured prayer. It's not total silence, but it's the kind of natural white noise that calms the nervous system. That kind of silence doesn't make you lonely. It makes you drift. By the way, if you're wondering if people ever chose to stay up after sunset, they did. Sometimes. Especially during festivals. But for the average peasant night, the math didn't add up. Candles were expensive, firewood was precious, and being caught out at night risked robbers' spirits or stepping into a very real and very cold puddle of pig manure. So you go to bed with the sun. Not because you're lazy, but because that's what your world demands. And your body, despite everything, aches, calluses, and that mystery pain in your shoulder says, thank you. It knows this rhythm. It was built for it. Sleep comes not like a thief in the night, but like a friend who wraps you in darkness, hushes your mind, and says, tomorrow will be hard, but not now. Now just rest. You lie down on what could generously be called a mattress, though it's more accurate to call it a sack of straw, or feathers if you're lucky. But most nights it's just dried pea husks, hay, or whatever you could scrape together that wouldn't grow mold by morning. This is your bed, a pallet they called it, and somehow you love it. It crunches when you shift. Sometimes things skitter in it. But after the day you've had, you could fall asleep on a rock. You've probably done that too, come to think of it. And here's the kicker. It actually works. Maybe it's not ergonomic, but that firm, uneven support molds to your body like the earth remembering your shape. No box spring, no adjustable headrest, no remote that raises your feet like a throne, just honest materials and a body too tired to care. You don't sleep alone, not even close. Your partner's next to you. The kids are packed in around you like potatoes in a root cellar. Maybe your grandmother's feet are touching your ribs. Maybe there's a baby tucked against your arm. And oh, someone forgot to kick the dog out. He's already claimed your side. And in some households, that wasn't even the half of it. Livestock sometimes shared sleeping quarters too. It's not unheard of for pigs or goats to curl up near the fire with the family. Warm bodies meant more body heat. And that was survival. It sounds chaotic, but it worked. And here's where it gets a little surprising. This kind of group sleeping actually helped regulate temperature and even encouraged deeper sleep cycles. Shared body warmth reduced nighttime waking from cold, and the subtle rhythm of breathing bodies around you helped your nervous system stay calm. It's like a lullaby, but made of snoring. Historians still debate whether peasants felt oppressed by these cramped quarters, or if they just considered it normal. Was this communal sleep a necessity, or was it comforting? We may never know, but based on the lack of written complaints, it seems people accepted it and likely even cherished the closeness. After all, in a world that often felt cruel, cold, and short, huddling together under a shared woolen blanket might have been the only tenderness you got all day. And don't forget the smells. The mattress smells like old grass. The people smell like people who work 14 hours a day and wash when it rains. But your brain doesn't register that as gross. It registers it as familiar. It's your family's scent, your version of comfort. Kind of like how babies today calm down when they smell their mom's shirt. Except your mom also smells like onions and sheep. Here's an odd fact to dream about. In some regions, mattresses were literally hung from ceiling beams during the day to keep them away from rats and moisture. Yes, imagine hoisting your bed like a barn pulley system each morning. Not the worst arm workout. But when night comes and you all lower your beds or just spread them across the packed earth floor, there's no pomp or circumstance. There's no sleep hygiene routine. No journaling or gratitude lists. You just crash. And there's something beautiful about that. The surrender. The simplicity. Your mattress isn't curated. Your sheets aren't Egyptian cotton. And yet your sleep is real. It's full. It's enough. Tonight, you've curled into your spot. You shift a little to make room for your sister's elbow or your kid's wild, kicking legs. Maybe someone mutters in their sleep. Maybe someone farts. You smirk. Because yes, the medieval night was cozy, but it wasn't always dignified. The mattress beneath you rustles. A strand of hay pokes your neck. The fire has gone down to embers. But you're warm. You're fed. And you've made it through another day without catching plague, getting kicked by a horse, or being drafted to fight in some lord's pointless war. So you exhale. Your body goes heavy. Around you, the slow chorus of your family's breathing begins to sync up. A shared rhythm, like an orchestra of exhaustion. Somehow you feel safe even if the door doesn't lock and the walls are thin, and the wolves sometimes howl a little too close. Because here in this little room of warmth, weight, and whispered dreams, you sleep. And for the next few hours, the world will have to spin without you. You wake up in the middle of the night. Not fully awake, more like hovering just above the dream world. The fire has dimmed to a faint orange glow. The cottage is quiet except for a few shifting bodies and the soft wheeze of your uncle's nose whistle. But this isn't insomnia. You're not panicked. You're not checking the medieval equivalent of an alarm clock, which to be clear would be nothing. You're in the middle of your first sleep and you're supposed to be awake right now. Yes, supposed to, because in medieval Europe, sleep wasn't one long stretch. It came in two parts. You'd fall asleep just after sunset, sleep deeply for a few hours, then naturally wake in the middle of the night, around midnight, for an hour or two of calm, quiet wakefulness. Then you'd ease back into your second sleep until dawn. Historians call this segmented sleep, and it was completely normal. People even wrote about it, mentioning how they'd wake during the watch, do a few things, and then go back to sleep like it was no big deal. And it wasn't. So here you are, half awake, not stressed, not alarmed, just there. Maybe you whisper a few words to your partner. Maybe you roll over and stare at the ceiling. Or maybe if you're feeling a bit ambitious, you pull your boots on and step out into the night. You won't be alone. Neighbors might be visiting one another. You might pass someone coming back from the village church. Some people use this mid-sleep break for praying, for writing, even for you, guessed it, making more peasants. Odd fact. Medical texts from the time mention this break in sleep as an ideal time for marital activity, claiming the body was most fertile and the mind most relaxed. Turns out, those midnight snuggles weren't just about staying warm, but more often it was quiet time, a moment for reflection. Maybe you stir the fire back to life. Maybe you stare at the glowing coals and let your thoughts drift. There's something strangely sacred about this hour, no pressure to do anything, no distractions, just you and the night. Historians still debate why this pattern disappeared. Some say it was the rise of artificial lighting that pushed us toward a single block of sleep. Others argue it was industrial work schedules demanding we consolidate our rest. Either way, segmented sleep slowly faded into something we now call insomnia. Imagine that modern people freak out when they wake in the middle of the night, while you just shrugged, pulled on your cloak, and maybe carved a spoon by firelight, or prayed, or sat in silence listening to the house creak and settle. And when you're ready, when your body gives that subtle nod, it's back to bed for round two. No tossing and turning, no worrying about whether you've hit REM yet. You just crawl back under the wool blanket, curl into the body heat of your sibling or spouse, or the goat snoring gently near your feet, and drift. This second sleep, it's even deeper, dream heavy, uninterrupted by the full bladder or half thoughts that plague modern sleep. Because your first sleep took the edge off. Now your body can truly rest, and there's something undeniably soothing about knowing that you're not meant to be asleep all at once, that your body has its own rhythm, that waking up doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're human, peasant human. So if tonight you find yourself blinking at the ceiling at 2:47 a.m., maybe don't panic, maybe just smile. Because you like some exhausted farmhand from the year 1320 might just be between your first and second sleep. The only difference is you probably don't have a goat. Morning doesn't slam into you like it does today. No screeching alarms, no calendar alerts, no microwave beeping to remind you that you forgot your coffee again. Instead, your morning arrives slowly. It creeps in with the soft gray light squeezing through the wooden slats in the wall. It hums in the low cluck of chickens waking up, or the faint groan of your father stretching his arms over his head with a sigh that somehow sounds 1,000 years old. And of course there's the rooster, that proud, punctual menace. He doesn't care what time you went to bed. He doesn't care that your second sleep just got really good. No, he belts out his morning anthem like a feathered war horn, calling you and every other soul within range to rise. You grunt, roll over, curse him silently in your head. But truth be told, you'd miss him if he ever shut up. And here's the funny thing. You don't feel groggy. Not in the modern I need 4 cups of coffee and a motivational podcast just to function kind of way. Your body has rested deeply. It knows what to do. Your muscles are still sore, of course, they always are, but your mind is steady, settled. It's like waking up inside a rhythm that's been beating longer than you've been alive. No digital clocks, no snooze buttons, just a natural wake-up call from your own circadian rhythm, shaped perfectly by firelight and moon phases and the subtle choreography of village life. It's not glamorous, but it's real, and your body responds like a tuned instrument. Historians still debate whether this kind of sleep was truly superior, or if we just imagine it was better because of nostalgia and contrast with modern insomnia. But when they study peasant schedules, circadian hormone levels, and the absence of nighttime artificial light, they keep coming back to the same conclusion: medieval sleep wasn't perfect, but it was shockingly healthy. Let's talk about cortisol, the stress hormone. Today it spikes at weird times. Morning rush hour, unread messages running late. For you, it rises gently in sync with the sun. You're not jolted awake. You're nudged. Big difference. And because you don't wake up to 1,000 to-dos or existential dread about the stock market, your day starts quietly. You sit up on the mattress, Shake out the straw stuck in your hair. Maybe pat the dog who's been sleeping on your leg for warmth. You listen for movement in the village. A cart rolling over cobblestones. A cough from the neighbor's chimney. There's no breakfast buffet, by the way. Maybe a bit of leftover pottage or ale if you're lucky. But you're not starving. You're not sluggish. You've had 7 to 9 hours of deep, interrupted but natural sleep, plus a quiet midnight reflection break, and now your body is ready. Odd fact, in some regions, there was no real word for alarm as we know it today. Waking up was an organic part of the day's cycle. Your body knew, and even if it didn't, the sounds of the farm would remind it soon enough. Animals don't wait. They're the original personal trainers, loud, hungry, persistent. So you get up. Slowly. There's no rush. No traffic jam waiting. Just chores. Endless chores. But also clarity. You feel present, grounded, a little hungry, a little stiff, but somehow alive in a way most of us forgot existed. The sky is a pale, powdery blue. Your breath fogs in the morning air. You step outside barefoot. The dirt is cold. The dew kisses your skin. And in that moment, with your feet in the earth and your mind still half dreaming, you feel something ancient. A kind of calm that comes not from comfort, but from rhythm, repetition, familiarity. This is how you've always woken up, and until clocks started buzzing, and phones started blinking, and office meetings replaced sunrises. This is how the world woke up too. Heat in your world doesn't come from a thermostat. It comes from the bodies beside you, from the fire you coaxed to life with a flint and breath, from layers of wool, straw, and occasionally livestock pressed against your legs, like a living radiator with hooves. There's no insulation. Your cottage has walls made of wattle and daub, essentially mud and sticks, and wind slips through like it pays rent. The roof leaks. The floor is dirt. And in the dead of winter, when the frost bites the corners of your breath and turns it to steam, you sleep like a burrito of survival. And here's the thing, it works. You share your bed not out of affection, though sure there's that, but out of necessity. Warmth is life, and you've become a master of it, not through modern fleece or thermal socks, but through body heat. A medieval peasant's version of central heating is 5 bodies in one bed and a snoring dog. Sometimes people even lined up like spoons, smallest in the middle, adults on the ends to block the cold. Children were practically treated like space heaters. If you were lucky, a pig might curl up near your feet. Not kidding. Pig heat is elite. Odd fact, pigs and people share similar skin temperature and even sleep patterns. That warm oink ball at your toes wasn't just company, it was insulation. Historians still debate how common animal sharing truly was. Some say it was reserved for only the poorest. Others argue it was widespread in colder regions. Either way, it's clear that body heat as a tool was deeply understood and deeply appreciated. And wool. Wool was your holy grail. Scratchy, uncomfortable, slightly smelly wool. You wore it to bed, you laid on it. You covered yourself with it. Wool is magic. It insulates even when wet, which was important because dry wasn't a guarantee in your world. You didn't change into pajamas. There were no pajamas. Your day clothes became your night clothes. Maybe you added a cloak, maybe you peeled off your muddy hose, but that was it. You slept in layers. The concept of letting your body breathe was modern nonsense to you. Breathing, try surviving. Your cottage, if it was anything like the typical 14th century peasant hut, had one central hearth. The fire was never allowed to fully die, especially in winter. Someone usually, whoever was still awake during that midnight interlude, would tend to it. Add a log, stir the embers, guard the warmth, and you felt it. Not a blazing heat, not a cozy warmth, but a sense that the cold was kept at bay. That there was a flicker of life in the center of your one-room world. And on especially cold nights, you could literally see your breath curling above your lips. You'd pull the blanket tighter, maybe tuck your head beneath it, and still you slept. Why? Because your body had adapted. You didn't need perfect temperatures to rest. You didn't need white noise machines and blackout curtains. You needed proximity pressure and persistence, and maybe a warm pig. The cold shaped you, yes, but it also soothed you. Modern sleep studies now explore how colder temperatures support deeper sleep. Turns out you had that figured out centuries before anyone built a sleep lab. And in that stillness, with the wind pushing against the shutters and your sibling's foot pressed into your thigh, you felt safe. Maybe not comfortable, but deeply safe. The kind of safety that came from closeness, from community, from knowing that everyone you loved was within arm's reach. No one's scrolling, no one's streaming, no one's texting under the blanket. You're all just there, together, silent, breathing. Sleeping in the cold doesn't sound romantic, but there's a strange intimacy to it, a shared struggle, a wordless warmth that wraps around you stronger than any duvet. So tonight, as you adjust the thermostat to a perfect 70 degrees and slide into your queen-size bed with memory foam and bamboo sheets, think about this: somewhere in a frost-bitten village, 5 peasants, a toddler, and a pig are out sleeping you. And they don't even need socks. You live in a world where everything is physical. No emails, no spreadsheets, no existential dread over unread group chats. Your hands work the soil. Your back carries bundles. Your brain, it's mostly busy calculating how many onions you'll need to last the winter, and whether that weird spot on your leg is a splinter or the beginning of something you'd rather not name. Stress, of course, exists. Your life isn't easy. You worry about the harvest, about illness, about rent owed to a lord who's never even said your name. But the kind of mental clutter that haunts modern sleep, it's largely absent. There's no, should I have majored in something else, or why didn't I reply to that email more enthusiastically? Your concerns are more immediate, tangible, and they wear you down in a way that paradoxically makes rest easier. That's the strange truth of medieval life. You're constantly exhausted but rarely restless. Evenings are particularly soothing. After supper, you don't hop on a video call or debate politics on a glowing rectangle. You sit by the fire, mend a tool, listen to someone hum. Maybe talk about the weather. Maybe don't talk at all. That silence isn't awkward, it's the reward. And when you lie down, your mind doesn't spiral. It lands. Like a bird settling into a nest, heavy from the weight of the day. Your sleep is a direct result of your labor, and there's something deeply satisfying about that. Historians still debate the long-term mental toll of this kind of life. Was the absence of abstract worry truly healthier, or did peasants simply suppress stress in ways we can't measure? Some argue their silence was trauma. Others say it was resilience. But either way, they slept. Here's an odd little twist: some peasants sang themselves to sleep. simple lullabies passed down through generations. Others recited prayers or repeated bits of old tales not to entertain but to anchor the mind. Repetition was a form of peace. You knew how to pace your thoughts because your whole day was paced by rhythm, hoofbeats, tools striking wood, the slow simmer of soup, the distant bells from the church tower. Everything around you moved in cycles. Nothing screamed for your attention. Nothing blinked or beeped or pinged. Compare that to now. You lie in bed bathed in a blue glow, your brain ping-ponging between imaginary conversations. Stock prices, a missed text from your aunt, and a YouTube rabbit hole that started with how to fix a leaky faucet and ended 3 hours later on a documentary about cave bears. You'd laugh at that. You, our peasant, would probably stare at the modern sleeper and say, "Why make rest so difficult when it's the one thing meant to come easy?" Because for you, rest isn't a reward, it's a requirement. You don't have the luxury of half sleeping through tomorrow's chores. You need full fuel, and the body obeys. When you close your eyes, you don't see glowing rectangles or the phantom scroll of social media. You see wheat swaying, a fire flickering, the after-image of your own tools, the calluses on your hands. Your brain doesn't flood you with doubts. It pats you on the back and says, "That's enough for today." And it is, so you sleep. Not because you've mastered mindfulness. Not because you've unlocked some ancient secret. But because you've been worked to your limits, given just enough food to mend, and wrapped in the warmth of bodies that love you even if they snore. You drift off without resistance, without hacks, without apps, because your mind is quiet. And the only thing scheduled tomorrow is waking up with the sun and doing it all again. Dinner wasn't glamorous. It usually never was. A wooden bowl filled with something grayish-brown and steaming. Pottage, your old dependable, probably 3 days old friend. A thick stew of whatever root vegetables you didn't already eat, a bit of barley or oats, maybe a bone or two if you're lucky. Meat was a rumor most nights, but onions, those were a sure thing. And alongside it, a mug of ale. Weak, warm, slightly sour ale. Because the water might kill you, but the ale just made you sleepy. You ate slowly. Not because you were savoring the flavor, there wasn't much of that, but because eating was the last real task of the day. And after that, nothing. No deadlines. No productivity guilt. No screen time reports to feel bad about. Just a quiet slide into rest. It turns out, this kind of diet, simple, fibrous, heavy, is ideal for sleep. Your gut works slowly through the night, releasing tryptophan and promoting melatonin. You don't know these words, of course. You just know you're full in the kind of way that makes your limbs heavy and your eyelids droop. Odd fact. Some medieval folk believed that eating leeks before bed helped keep away nightmares. Others swore by cabbage. Either way, you never turn down a hot meal, superstitions or not. And while today's health influencers warn against eating late for you, it's necessary. You burn calories like a furnace all day long. Going to bed hungry means shivering awake at midnight. But a solid, slow-digesting bowl of pottage, that's your ticket to staying asleep until the rooster loses his mind. Your meals aren't just sleep fuel, they're a rhythm. Predictable, unchanging. And that constancy tells your body it's time to wind down. No intermittent fasting, no superfoods, just food. Warm, heavy, enough. Historians still debate whether peasant diets were nutritionally sufficient in the long term. Most agree you were probably deficient in a few key vitamins, But oddly, your gut health was likely better than the average fast food-fed modern person. Fermented foods, whole grains, seasonal vegetables without trying, you were crushing the modern microbiome trend. And this matters. Because good sleep doesn't just come from your brain, it comes from your belly. Gut bacteria influence everything from hormones to immune response. You never heard the phrase gut-brain axis, but you lived it. Every time you ate a turnip with dirt still clinging to it, you were unknowingly feeding the good stuff inside you. Your body worked in harmony with itself, not because you planned it that way, but because it had no other choice. You lived in balance with nature's limitations, and sleep was the reward. After dinner, there was no dessert. Maybe a bit of honey if you were lucky, or a small piece of dried fruit saved from market day. You didn't crave sugar the way modern people do. Your palate was tuned to what the earth gave, and your stomach was grateful. You finished your meal with a satisfied grunt, wiped your mouth with the back of your hand, and stretched out by the hearth. No tea, no pills, no weighted blanket. Just warmth, digestion, and the steady decrescendo of the day. And that's the thing, everything led to sleep. The work wore down your body. The food settled your stomach. The fire slowed your thoughts. Your family's presence quieted your mind. You weren't fighting your own biology, you were flowing with it. Tonight, when you finish your own dinner, maybe something microwaved, maybe something delivered, notice how your body feels. Are you full or just fed? Is your stomach calm or churning? Is your brain ready to rest or still demanding caffeine? You medieval peasant knew how to answer all those questions, not because you read it on a blog, but because your life made it so. So you sigh, lean back and let your food do what it was always meant to do, carry you gently into another night of deep, dream-laced, perfectly peasant sleep. Some nights as you drift off, you hear them, those low echoing chimes floating through the wind from the chapel tower in the village. Church bells. They don't just call you to worship. They call you to sleep. Or more accurately, they frame your sleep. A slow, sacred rhythm marking the hours like gentle pulses in the night. They ring at vespers. They ring at matins. They ring for deaths, weddings, saints' days, or just to remind you that time exists, not in seconds or scrolls, but in sound. You don't need a clock to know where you are in the night. The bells tell you. They always tell you. And somehow they don't wake you up. They comfort you. Because even in sleep, the bells mean that somewhere someone's awake, maybe a monk in a stone cell, maybe the old man who lights the chapel candles. And if they're awake, you don't have to be. It's strange, but the bells blend into your dreams, like the church is singing lullabies across the rooftops. Sometimes the sound feels distant, like it's drifting in from another world. Other times it's right above you, like heaven leaning in. Dreams were no small thing in your world. They weren't just leftovers from your day, they were messages, warnings, divine nudges. If you dreamt of a cow with two heads, you might ask the priest what it meant. If your dead uncle spoke to you in sleep, you'd remember his words as if they came from scripture. Historians still debate how much weight peasants truly gave to their dreams. Were they spiritual revelations or just storytelling leftovers from minds soaked in myth? But dream journals existed. Folklore survived. So clearly, sleep wasn't just rest. It was a conversation. And in this quiet, pre-industrial world, the line between dreams and reality wasn't sharp. The night itself felt enchanted. You'd fall asleep with the scent of wood smoke in your nose, only to dream of walking through foggy forests or standing before kings. You'd wake and wonder, Was that a memory or a message? Here's an odd fact in some parts of medieval Europe. People believed your soul literally left your body during sleep. That dreams were your spirit's way of roaming the earth or heaven or darker places, which makes you wonder, how far did you travel last night? Even the structure of your home added to this feeling. One room, one hearth, one window. The darkness wasn't just outside, it filled the entire space like water in a bowl. You didn't see your dreams, you breathed them, lived them. And the bells. The bells were your lifeline to the waking world. They let you know you were still here, still safe, still wrapped in the real no matter how far your spirit wandered. You didn't think about all this, of course. You just closed your eyes and trusted it would all make sense by morning. That your dreams would sort things out. That the bells would keep you grounded. And maybe they did, because when morning came, you didn't need to ask what time it was. You didn't need to check a screen. You already felt it somewhere deep in your bones, guided by the music of metal echoing through wood and stone and sleep. And that music still plays in some places. Only now we call it a notification, and it's not quite the same. No blue light. No phones. No TVs humming in the background. Just firelight candle flicker and moonlight pushing through tiny window cracks like a quiet visitor. That's all you had. And that was everything. Your body knew it was night. Your brain wasn't being tricked into thinking it was still daytime by glowing rectangles. The pineal gland, your body's sleepy little helper, worked exactly as it should. Melatonin flowed like clockwork, unbothered by LED interference or late-night TikToks. Your body was in harmony with the dark. You didn't have blackout curtains. You had real blackout. When the fire died and the clouds covered the moon, your cottage plunged into a kind of darkness that modern humans almost never experience. It wasn't can't read a book dark. It was can't see your own hand dark. The kind of dark that wraps around you like a heavy wool cloak and says, it's time. And it was time for sleep, because there was literally nothing else to do. No digital rabbit holes to fall into. No late-night productivity hacks to chase. Just rest. Honest, quiet, total rest. Odd fact. Some sleep studies today simulate medieval lighting conditions, dim, flickering light, 0 screens for a week. The results. People fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, and report more vivid dreams. So yeah, you and your oil lamp were basically better sleep coaches than most wellness influencers. You probably didn't appreciate it, of course. You weren't lying there thinking, my circadian rhythm is so aligned right now. No, you were scratching your leg, shifting to find a warmer spot and trying not to elbow your brother in the face. But your body appreciated it. Deeply. And when you did want a bit of light at night, you had to work for it. Candles were made of tallow, rendered animal fat. They smoked stank and dripped like slow, greasy tears. You didn't waste them frivolously. Maybe one candle was lit, and it stayed near the fire where you were all gathered. Once that flame died, the night reclaimed its kingdom. And here's something magical about that: the darkness didn't feel threatening. Not always. It was normal, comforting even. It made your world small, manageable. The cottage became the entire universe. A few feet of space, a few glowing embers, and the steady sound of breathing. Historians still debate how safe the night truly felt to peasants. There were threats, wild animals, thieves, spirits, but inside your home, behind thick wood and sleeping bodies, the dark became a kind of protection. It kept the outside world outside. It tucked you in. And in that darkness, your mind slowed down. There were no lights to overstimulate you, no distractions pulling you away from sleep. If anything, the dark was a signal, a lullaby without sound. Your eyes adjusted to the gloom, not to focus, but to rest. You blinked slowly. You stared at the orange glow of coals. You watched shadows play across the beams above. That was your bedtime story. Maybe, just maybe, your grandmother mumbled a folk tale under her breath. Something about a fox who turned into a man. Or a girl who walked into the woods and came back changed. She wasn't trying to entertain you, she was reminding herself of the old stories. And you listened barely awake, half in the story already, and before you knew it, you were gone. Dropped into sleep, not like a machine powering off, but like a boat slipping into a fog-covered lake. No edges, no final moment, just sleep. And all of it was powered by darkness. True, full, quiet darkness. So tonight, when you reach for your phone just one last time, ask yourself, what would you dream about if the only light you saw after sunset was firelight? And what might you remember if your sleep wasn't constantly interrupted by the glow of the world begging you to stay awake? Because you in that cold, mud-floored hut knew something we've forgotten. The night was for dreaming, and you let it do its job. There's a moment right before you fall asleep when the entire world goes still. No chickens, no wind, no murmurs from the hearth. Just the sound of your own breath, and maybe someone snoring lightly in the corner. And in that silence, you feel something strange, peace. You've spoken your last words for the day, and they were probably simple. Good night. Move over. Stop hogging the blanket. And then, quiet. You didn't spend your night talking. Conversation wasn't endless. It wasn't expected. People didn't have long philosophical debates or scream into the void of Twitter. Talking after dark was reserved for prayer worry or silence filled with shared presence. That absence of constant chatter wasn't loneliness, it was normal. Historians still debate how much talking peasants actually did in the evenings. Some argue there were hours of storytelling, jokes, even singing. Others believe silence was the dominant mode, partly because people were just too exhausted to do anything else. The truth, like most things, probably lies in between. But one thing's clear, your nights weren't noisy, and sleep welcomed that silence. Your body relaxed, not just from the physical strain of the day, but from the social stillness that came with it. No one was trying to persuade you, perform for you, or sell you something. No one needed a reaction. You could simply be, and everyone around you. They weren't strangers. You didn't sleep in isolation, but you also didn't sleep in anxiety. You weren't trying to impress your bedmates. They'd seen you covered in manure, remember? They weren't there for your reputation. They were there for the warmth, the shared space, the mutual survival. That communal closeness didn't just keep you warm, it made you feel safe. Not in a modern I've got locks and a home security system kind of way, but in the primal sense. You weren't alone. You were protected just by the presence of others. Odd fact, in some villages, snoring was actually seen as reassuring. A snoring partner meant someone was deeply asleep, unbothered, at peace. And your brain, even in slumber, took comfort in that. The soft rhythms of snoring, breathing, and shifting bodies were your lullaby. There were other sounds, of course. A creaking beam, a mouse rustling in the grain sack. Maybe the occasional groan of the wind pushing through the thatch roof like it was looking for a way in. But even those weren't scary. They were familiar. They were part of the symphony. You slept not in spite of the noise, but with it. Your mind learned the difference between danger and background music. That's a skill most people today don't even realize they've lost. And there's something else, something subtle. When the world is truly dark, and your home is truly still, and your body is truly tired, you don't need silence to fall asleep. You need stillness. That's different. Stillness is a feeling, a weight, a hush that wraps around you and says, shh, that's enough. You weren't trying to optimize anything. You weren't timing your sleep cycle or monitoring your heart rate with a bracelet. You didn't even know what a sleep schedule was. You just slept. Because that's what humans do when the world is quiet and the body is calm. And somehow even in a noisy, drafty, overcrowded, straw-filled cottage, you found that stillness. Night after night, day after day. Because you knew what most of us forget, sleep isn't about perfection. It's about surrender. So tonight, maybe don't aim for 8 flawless hours. Don't obsess over blue light or blackout curtains or brainwave apps. Just lie down, get still, breathe deeply, and let the silence do the rest. You didn't get undressed for bed. That would have been ridiculous. In your world, sleep didn't come with an outfit change. There were no silk pajamas or comfy loungewear. You wore what you had, often the same thing you worked in all day. Wool tunic, coarse hose, maybe a cloak if it was cold enough. And if you were lucky, shoes came off. But that depended on the mud situation. There was no drawer full of sleep clothes, no fresh pair folded at the foot of your mattress. Clothes were precious. You had maybe 2 outfits tops, one for working, one for church. And if they were both damp, you went to bed damp. And here's the thing, sleeping in your clothes was actually practical. You retained body heat. You stayed protected from biting straw or curious insects. And if there was an emergency in the night, fire, thieves, pigs breaking loose, you were already dressed, ready to run, ready to fight, ready to chase that cursed pig down the lane again. It always got out. You knew it would. Modern people might shudder at the thought. Sleep in dirty clothes with sweat and smells. But in your world, that wasn't gross. That was just life. If you smelled like onions and effort, it meant you were doing your part. No one judged. No one expected lavender-scented laundry. Odd fact. Some medieval people believed that removing clothes at night left you vulnerable to night spirits or sickness. There were even folk remedies warning against cold air on bare skin during sleep. Whether it was superstition or just common sense, one thing was clear: bare skin had no business in a peasant's bedtime routine. And your bed didn't mind. The straw didn't care what you wore. Neither did the fleas, or your brother sleeping 2 inches from your face. What mattered was warmth, consistency, survival. Historians still debate how frequently peasants bathed or changed clothes. Some records suggest weekly, others monthly, but almost all agree sleeping in day wear wasn't just common, it was expected. And weirdly, it helped. There's something deeply grounding about collapsing into sleep, with your boots still by the door, your tunic still wrinkled from work, and the scent of smoke clinging to your sleeves. You didn't need to prepare for sleep. You were already ready. Your body didn't need a wind-down ritual. It was the ritual. There was no skincare routine, no diffuser puffing eucalyptus into the air, just the raw, honest reality of your body as it was tired, alive, and exactly where it needed to be. You might use a cloak as a blanket, or wrap a scarf around your head to block the wind slipping through the cracks in the wall. Your shoes rested nearby, stuffed with straw to dry. And everything you needed you already had on. Your outfit told the story of your day. Dirt on your knees from planting. Soot on your sleeves from stoking the fire. A patch that your wife sewed in haste. You didn't need new clothes to feel clean. You needed sleep to feel restored. And when you woke, you didn't get ready. You were already ready. Maybe rinse your face with cold water from a basin. Maybe stretch. Maybe curse the rooster. But your clothes stayed on. You rolled into the day exactly as you rolled out of sleep. So tonight, when you fold your pajamas or adjust your sleep mask, think of yourself lying in the cold with a tunic clinging to your skin and the smell of turnips in the air, and realize you don't need softness to sleep. You need stillness. You need enough. And you had that even in the same clothes you wore to dig trenches, chop wood, and carry buckets of muddy water. Because sleep for you wasn't about comfort. It was about closing your eyes and letting the body do what it was born to do. Before the age of melatonin gummies and YouTube meditations, you had something else. Herbs, charms, and good old-fashioned peasant ingenuity. Your world didn't separate magic from medicine. If you had trouble sleeping, and let's be honest, you usually didn't. You didn't Google it. You asked your grandmother, or the village healer, or the old woman who lived near the forest and always smelled like mint and mystery. And they'd hand you something, a bundle of dried lavender maybe, or valerian root crushed into powder, or mugwort tied in a tiny pouch and slipped under your pillow. These weren't bedtime luxuries. They were survival tools. Ancient earthy sleep aids passed down with the same reverence as recipes or warnings about which mushrooms will definitely kill you. Odd fact, valerian root, which you might have steeped into a bitter tea before bed, is still used today in modern sleep supplements. Your ancestors were onto something long before pharmacy shelves started branding it with cursive fonts and pastel labels. You didn't have sleep hygiene. You had sleep folklore. Some believed that placing a sprig of rosemary above the door would keep restless spirits from stealing your dreams. Others swore by stuffing a dream pillow with hops and chamomile. A few even whispered prayers to Saint Dymphna, patron of sleeplessness and mental unrest. She didn't have a hotline, but she did get a lot of midnight petitions. Historians still debate how much of this was spiritual belief versus practical herbal medicine. Was the rosemary warding off nightmares or just warding off lice? Either way, it worked often enough to stay in circulation for centuries. And then there were the charms, little pouches filled with feathers, bones, or blessed soil, crosses made of twigs, symbols carved into headboards. You didn't question their power. Sleep was sacred. And anything that helped you fall into it a little faster or return from it without illness or madness was worth trying. You'd rub nettle oil on your temples or knot red thread around your wrist so the devil wouldn't pull you by the hand into dreams. You'd mutter a rhyme, not fully understanding it, but knowing that your mother said it and her mother before her, and it always worked. Maybe it wasn't the herb. Maybe it was the act, the routine, the rhythm, the human need to mark the passage from waking to sleep with intention. No app, no ASMR playlist, just your hands folding a piece of linen, your breath warm against the dried leaves, inside your voice saying soft words in the dark. And these small rituals, they told your body, it's time. You are safe. You are done for the day. Some nights you dreamed of saints and angels, other nights of wolves, Occasionally of your neighbor's cow who had absolutely no business being able to speak, and yet in the dream gave surprisingly good advice. And you always remembered because in a world without digital noise, dreams didn't get erased. They stuck, like sap, like stories. You'd whisper them over breakfast. I dreamed of fire last night. Someone would nod seriously. Storms coming. No one rolled their eyes. Dreams were information. Sometimes weird, sometimes nonsense, but always worth noticing. And if you woke up frightened, you'd reach for your charm, or relight the fire, or recite that same old prayer that always helped. You didn't fix your sleep. You participated in it. You honored it. Even when it came in fragments. Even when it came with strange images and tangled limbs and creaking floors. It was never something to conquer. It was something to surrender to again and again. So tonight, when you scroll past 10 different night routines, promising better rest, remember that you once slept with dried herbs under your head and a whisper of protection on your lips. And somehow you still woke up ready for another day of mud hunger, love, labor, and dreams. It's January. The wind is howling like it lost something. Frost clings to the inside of the window like a ghost trying to get in. Your breath rises in little white clouds, and even the fire seems too tired to try tonight. You pull the blanket tighter. It's a woolen mass of patches and memories your mother stitched it from old clothes, maybe even her mother's too. Beside you, someone shifts. Your siblings' cold toes press into your calves. You don't complain. You shift to make space. Then you shift again to steal some heat. This is not a romantic kind of cuddling. This is survival. The medieval winter night was long. Not wow, it's 5:30 p.m. and dark already long. No, we're talking 16 hours of darkness kind of long. And the only way to stay warm through it, pile on the people. Human body heat was your furnace and physical closeness was your thermostat. It might be your parents, your children, your grandparents, whoever lived under the same roof. All mashed together like sleepy sardines. Some families even slept sitting up when there wasn't enough room to lie flat. You leaned. You slumped. You made do. Odd fact, in certain regions of Europe, people literally built beds into the wall, enclosed box beds with sliding wooden doors to trap heat inside. You'd crawl in, shut the door, and become your own little oven. And then, of course, there were the animals, pigs, sheepdogs. If they lived in your home, and often they did, they got to be part of the cuddle pile. A warm snout pressed against your feet was worth the snoring, the smells, and the occasional midnight surprise on the floor. Historians still debate whether this co-sleeping was a comforting tradition or an uncomfortable necessity. Was it bonding or just biology? But anyone who's ever felt a freezing wind slip through a cracked window knows the answer. It doesn't matter. You did what you had to do to stay warm. And warmth wasn't just physical, it was emotional. When you're huddled in a room with your entire family, the boundaries blur. You hear each other breathe. You feel each other's shifts. There's no room for pretending. You're human, you're tired, and you're here. And that closeness has an unexpected effect. It calms the nervous system. Today we talk about weighted blankets and deep pressure therapy for anxiety and better sleep. Guess what? You already had that, except your weighted blanket was your brother lying across your shins. And your therapy was a toddler drooling on your shoulder while the dog wheezed like a tiny accordion. You didn't need silence to fall asleep. You needed safety. And you found it in warmth. Not ideal warmth, not even always comfortable warmth, but shared warmth. and in that cocoon of wool, hay, and body odor you sank. You didn't worry about your bedtime temperature setting. You didn't wonder if your heating bill would go up. Your entire climate control system was a pile of breathing bodies and maybe one sputtering fire. You closed your eyes, knowing the cold couldn't reach you, not as long as someone was pressed against your back, not as long as the fire had one coal left to glow. The wind could rage all night. The frost could tap at the window like a beggar asking for entry. But inside that huddle of limbs and blankets and dreams, you were warm, and you were home. Some days were different, not because you worked less because you didn't, but because the church said you could rest. Festival days, feast days, saints' days, holy days. Days where miraculously nobody expected you to haul, dig, sow, or shear. And on those days you got a rare, sacred gift bonus sleep. Imagine it. You wake up and don't have to. There's no plow to pull, no turnips to plant, no hay to haul before sunrise. You get to stretch, maybe roll over, maybe even, if the rooster allows it, sleep a little longer. These were the days the church calendar gifted you, not just with sermons and food, but with time. And time to a peasant was worth more than gold. Historians have noted that medieval calendars were packed with feast days, sometimes up to 80 to 100 per year, depending on the region. Not all were full breaks, but many involved reduced work and communal gatherings. These weren't lazy holidays. They were structured pauses woven into the rhythm of peasant life, and you didn't waste them. After a few hours of morning prayer or helping prepare for the communal meal, you'd eat more than usual meat if it was available and honeyed treats that would have made your everyday stew blush with envy. And with a full belly and a warm fire, what did you do? You slept. You snuck in naps on festival afternoons, scandalous, glorious naps. Right there on the grass if it was summer, or by the hearth in winter, while a cousin sang and someone passed around cider. You'd drift off, not from exhaustion, but from contentment. A full belly, a peaceful heart, the rare feeling of enough. Odd fact, some medieval church sermons warned against excessive napping on feast days, claiming it was a sign of sloth, which tells us that yes, people were totally doing it. These bonus sleeps weren't just indulgence, they were repair. After weeks of bone-crushing labor, a single afternoon of true rest could feel like a miracle. You'd wake feeling different, like your muscles remembered how to stretch without seizing, like your mind remembered how to drift, and the dreams on feast day naps, vivid, surreal. You once dreamed you were flying, literally flying over your own cottage, watching your family wave from below. When you told the village priest, he smiled and told you it was divine favor. When you told your brother, he told you it was the cider. Either way, you remembered it, because rest like that wasn't normal. It stood out, and you held it like a secret in your chest for days afterward. Historians still debate whether peasants were truly overworked, or if the feast day structure provided enough micro breaks to keep people healthy. Some argue that the rhythm of hard labor, holy day repeat created a kind of natural work-life balance. Others say it was just barely survivable. But you didn't think in terms like that. You just knew that on some days you got to nap without guilt, eat without rationing, laugh without effort, and sleep without pain. And that was everything. Tonight, as you lay down after another long day, you carry that feeling with you. Not just the physical tiredness, but the memory of those rare days when time expanded and sleep came not from collapse, but from joy. You smile in the dark. Maybe hum a tune from the last festival. maybe dream again of flying. Because even in a life of labor, sleep was never just recovery. Sometimes it was celebration. But not every night was peaceful. Some nights you lay there with your eyes open in the dark, listening to someone coughing beside you. The kind of cough that rattles like broken wood. The kind that doesn't go away. The kind that doesn't bode well. Because in your world, illness was always close. You didn't have a thermometer. You didn't have penicillin. You didn't even have a word for germ. You had prayers, hope, and maybe an onion tied to the bedpost to ward off the plague. And when someone got sick, you didn't sleep to recharge. You slept to escape. You curled up tighter in the straw. You pulled the blanket over your ears. You tried not to breathe too deeply. Not just because of the smell, but because you didn't know how these things spread. Some thought it was bad air. Others thought it was punishment from God. Either way, you didn't want it. And if you were the one coughing, feverish, shivering, you tried to sleep it away. Because you had no other medicine. You drift in and out, burning, freezing, sweating. The body trying everything it could while your family whispered around you. Someone poured broth into your mouth. Someone held your hand. Someone wept quietly when they thought you were asleep. Odd fact. In some villages, people placed bread on the chest of a sleeping sick person. If the bread stayed cold, it meant the illness was still inside. If it warmed, maybe it meant you were healing. It wasn't science, but it was something. Sleep was your only weapon, your only refuge. It was the one place where your body could stop fighting for a moment and just rest. Historians still debate how much sleep peasants actually got during illness. Some say the body demanded more rest than usual. Others argue that pain, hunger, and fear made sleep impossible. But either way, it's clear that sleep was often the only treatment available. And sometimes that sleep became something else. Because in your world, death was familiar. And it often looked like someone who simply fell asleep and didn't wake up. You saw it before. The neighbor who went to bed after complaining of chills and never stirred again. The baby who stopped breathing in the night. The old woman who just closed her eyes and went. In some strange way, sleep and death were cousins, one visiting nightly, the other eventually. That's why people prayed before bed. Not just for rest, but for protection, for another morning, for another chance. If I should die before I wake, wasn't a metaphor in your world. It was a possibility, and that made sleep sacred. You didn't treat it casually. You didn't resist it. You didn't push it off for one more task. You let it come when it would, grateful every time it carried you into morning. And when someone didn't wake up, you wrapped them, you prayed. You didn't wail, there was no time. Life moved forward. You still had work to do. The sun didn't wait. The cows still needed milking. But for a while you slept differently. Heavier. Quieter, with one less breath in the room. Tonight you're not sick, not yet. You feel strong, tired, yes, but whole. And as you lie down, you say your usual prayer. Or maybe just whisper a name. And then, as always, you surrender. Because sleep isn't just recovery. Sometimes it's a goodbye, a hiding place, a waiting room for what comes next. And sometimes, it's healing. Dreams in your world weren't brushed off. They weren't just weird stuff your brain makes up. They were messages, maybe from God, maybe from something older, something deeper. When you dreamed, you paid attention. And oh, the dreams you had. Some were simple, walking through the village, but the sky was green. Talking to your mother, though, she'd passed 2 winters ago. Chasing a chicken that turned into a man. These weren't just odd, they were important. You woke up remembering them, sometimes feeling them in your chest, like an echo you couldn't shake. You might whisper one to your partner in the morning. I saw a black dog standing by the well. They'd nod solemnly. Bad luck's coming. Or you'd tell the old woman down the lane, the one with 3 missing teeth and a talent for reading things in smoke. She'd say, that's a hunger dream. Fill your belly better tonight. Dreams were information. Odd fact. There were actual dream manuals in circulation during the Middle Ages, long lists of symbols and what they supposedly meant. If you dreamed of falling, it might mean spiritual failure. Dream of flying. A sign of pride. And water, always tricky, always mysterious. Some people even kept dream stones under their pillows, smooth river pebbles said to sharpen the vision. Others wore charms or hung herbs by the bed to ward off nightmares or summon clearer messages. Historians still debate how literal medieval people took their dreams. Some argue it was superstition. Others believe it was a language just as valid as scripture weather signs or the aches in your bones predicting rain. Either way, your dreams mattered. And because you lived without distractions, your dreams were louder. You didn't drown them in notifications or podcasts, or the last thing you saw before bed being a meme of a dancing rat. You fell asleep to firelight, full belly's silence. Your mind had space to unwind its reels. You dreamed in color, in scent, in sound. You dreamed of fields you'd never seen, and saints you never met. Sometimes you woke up crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes sweating, but always changed, even if just a little. Your dreams weren't something you Googled to explain. You lived with them, carried them into the day like you carried your tools, heavier on some mornings, lighter on others, and they shaped you. You remembered the night you dreamed of wolves, and your neighbor died the next day. Coincidence, maybe, but the chill in your spine still returns when the moon is full. You remembered when your sister dreamed of fire and the barn burned down a week later. She didn't speak for days, and once, just once, you dreamed of heaven. Light so bright it ached. Music without sound. You woke up crying. Couldn't explain why. Just knew something had touched you. Dreams were both mirror and mystery, and even if you couldn't make sense of them, you respected them. You didn't try to control them. You didn't have lucid dream playlists or dream tracking apps. You didn't think of them as glitches or random neurons firing. You thought of them as visits from ancestors, from spirits, from fears you couldn't name, from hopes you didn't know you had. And sometimes they were nothing at all, just your mind playing in the dark, after a long day of bending, lifting, worrying, and loving. But even then you woke up slower, softer, a little further away from the world. Because the dream world always left a film on your skin, like mist you couldn't shake off until the sun fully rose. So tonight, when you close your eyes, you wonder not if you'll dream, but what story we'll visit. Will it be the forest again, the one with the endless path and the singing trees? Or will it be your mother's voice telling you something you don't understand until morning? Either way, you are ready. Because dream or no dream, message or nonsense, you know this. Sleep is the gate. And you are always welcome to walk through. Some things in life don't have clear answers. And your sleep, it's one of them. Historians still puzzle over it. They pore through old manuscripts, peasant diaries, church records. They analyze bedding materials, circadian rhythms, even medieval paintings to figure out how you slept so well. And the truth is, no one fully agrees. Was it the physical exhaustion, the lack of blue light, the communal closeness, the 2-part sleep schedule, the root stew, the goat at your feet? Maybe it was all of it, or none of it, or just a life so different from ours that it can't really be translated. One theory says your excellent sleep came from absence. The absence of screens, electric lights, alarm clocks, and productivity pressure. Another theory argues it was structure routines baked into the bones of your day, from sunrise to sundown. Others say it was just biological burnout. You collapsed because you were worked to the core, like a body-shaped candle burned to the wick. Odd fact. A few researchers once tried replicating medieval sleep conditions in a controlled environment. No artificial light, natural work patterns, early meals, segmented sleep. Within 2 weeks, the participants began dreaming more vividly and falling asleep within 10 minutes. One even said it was the first time I've ever felt like my body wanted to sleep. Still others point out that while sleep might have been easier to fall into, it wasn't always restful. You didn't have a chiropractor. You didn't have a plush mattress. You didn't always get uninterrupted hours, not with pigs squealing, children coughing, or thatched roofs leaking onto your forehead at 3 a.m. But here's the truth: you didn't overthink it. You didn't optimize your sleep. You didn't read 10 books about biohacking or subscribe to a sleep coach's newsletter. You just slept. When the work was done and the dark crept in and your body said enough, you listened. No perfection, no precision, just presence. And that presence of body, of mind, of moment is something we lost somewhere along the way. We now treat sleep like a puzzle to be solved. You treated it like a gift to be received. You didn't analyze your dreams with a morning journal. You sat by the fire, spoon in hand, and said, "Strange dream last night." A chicken turned into a priest. And someone would shrug and say, "Maybe it means you need more eggs." You didn't need it to mean something. It just was. Maybe that's what the historians are missing. That your sleep wasn't better because it was deeper or longer or perfectly timed. It was better because it was uncomplicated. It was human. So tonight, if you find yourself lying in a soft, warm bed and still can't sleep, maybe stop trying so hard. Stop tracking. Stop scrolling. Stop fixing. And instead, try being a little more like you. Not the idealized version. The real you. The muddy, aching, hungry, laughing, tired, dreaming you. The you who lived with the seasons. Who prayed before bed. Who didn't need to earn rest. It was yours by default. Because you were alive, and you'd done enough for one day. Time was strange in your world. Not because it moved faster or slower, but because you didn't own it. You didn't measure it with perfect little numbers ticking by on glowing rectangles. You didn't slice it into meetings and deadlines. You just lived inside it like a fish in water. And in that kind of time, sleep wasn't scheduled. It wasn't counted. It wasn't optimized. It simply was woven into your life like the warp and weft of a wool tunic. Not a thing apart from the day, but the soft, dark half of it. The necessary pause, the reset button that didn't beep, it just breathed. You knew without knowing that a third of your life was spent asleep. But you didn't resent that. You didn't try to shrink it, resist it, push back against it like modern people do, caffeinating, forcing, delaying. You honored it, even if you never used that word. You knew that after a long day of sowing fields, hauling buckets, dodging angry geese, and arguing over turnip rations, you would eventually collapse. Not because it was bedtime, but because you were done, and your body knew it. And what a beautiful thing, really, a life measured in sleep. Because for all the hardship, all the cold, all the hunger and fear and aching joints, you got to end each day the same way, wrapped in wool and shadow, with your head resting against a sack of straw, the fire humming low, and a heart that for a few hours didn't need to carry anything. Odd fact. Some medieval theologians believed that sleep was the soul returning to God each night for gentle care, like being cradled in divine hands, not dead, not dreaming, just held. Historians still debate what that says about your mindset. Was it comfort or coping, faith, or just a metaphor to help people make peace with the unknown? But in a way, they're all right, because you didn't just sleep for rest. You slept for healing, for forgetting, for remembering, for leaving this world behind just long enough to come back to it softer. Your sleep wasn't divided from your waking life. It was the other half of the same story. The breathing in after a long, hard exhale. The moment of dark before dawn began again. And what a thing to live like that. To not fear sleep, to not fight it, to let it gather you like rain into a bowl and hold you until morning. You didn't dream of progress or productivity. You dreamed of walking through familiar woods, of faces you missed, of voices you'd only ever heard in dreams. And when you woke, the day pulled you forward again, as it always did, as it always would. But your sleep, the third of your life spent not being useful, was never wasted. It was sacred. It was yours, and it might just be the most honest part of your entire existence. You wake before the sun, not because something startled you, but because your body simply knows. The rooster hasn't crowed yet. The fire is just a dim glow of orange coals. The air is cold enough to make you pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, but you're awake, softly, fully, peacefully. The others are still asleep. Someone breathes with a whistle. Someone murmurs in a dream. Someone's foot is resting squarely against your spine and you don't move it. It's warm. You lie there in the stillness and listen. A few birds stir outside. The wind whispers through the thatch. A dog lets out one of those deep, sighing groans, like even it isn't ready to rise. And in that pause between dream and duty, you remember the truth of your life. That you are not hurried. That you are not haunted by alarms or appointments. That no one is waiting for an email reply. That the only thing waiting is the day, and it can wait a little longer. There is no rush. Because even though you have fields to walk and wood to chop and mouths to feed, you already did the most important thing. You rested, and not in some shallow, half-slept, stress-riddled way. You sank. You folded into the warmth of others. You let your body go soft. You let your mind unravel its knots in dreams you don't fully remember, but somehow still carry in your chest. And now you rise like bread left to proof overnight, not all at once, but gradually, gently, with the light. Odd fact. The word bed comes from ancient roots meaning a place dug into the earth. A nest, a hollow, a pocket made just for rest. And that's what your little straw mattress is. A nest in the wild world, a shelter inside time, a gentle interruption to everything hard. Historians still wonder how you managed, how you bore the labor, the cold, the hunger, the endless repetition of days. But the answer perhaps is simpler than they think. You slept. Every night despite it all, you returned to yourself. You surrendered. You trusted. And when you woke, the world, harsh, wild, uncertain, was somehow still manageable. Because your dreams gave you something real, and rest made you someone whole. So tonight, before you plug in your phone or check your calendar one more time, pause. Lie down. Let the fire fade. Let the darkness wrap around you. And remember what you once knew without even knowing it. Sleep is not the absence of life. It's what makes life bearable.